Kita niyo ng slides?
Sir.
Okay, so
Yes, sir.
introduction of computers basically will start on how we define our basics, kung mga the basics kinaton, from starting being not only being familiarized by the term but also learning other kumaga la ang language na to or mga items nga related sa computers. So we're going to go with the discussion outline, no, of having the history of the computers, defining it and describing a computer system. We also have different computer classification categories. We define the two types of computer software. We also describe communications and networks and identify computers and technology and its daily use in our daily naton nga pangobra, like for school or for at home or sa work. So we call it computer vocabulary that will be added in today's topic. So we have a few. Hindi lang mag-inasal basically ligid, pero it's important that we get to familiarize and use the proper terms, no, in defining each of these words and phrases to our knowledge setup. So desktop computer, mga electronic communication. We also have embedded, extranet hardware icon, also information, defining the internet, intranet, the mobile devices. We have also have our network, nodes, personal computer, servers, software, and supercomputer and other users as a part of our vocabulary. So we started with defining a computer. Its basic definition is a machine that can be programmed to carry out sequences of arithmetic and logic operations automatically. And it is considered as one of the most important inventions of the 20th century, and when it has become a prevalent use after its invention, it became part of society in its various uses, not only from having to just from the old school na supercomputer, but we also added them from sa aton nga basic kid naton, going to cell phones, mga embedded nga mga technologies, embedded cameras, ATMs, and also computerized setup sa aton nga mga automobiles. So computers in a way helped us learn about health and medicine by helping in set up or doing research, mas naging mas dasig ng producing sa output, and also with the space and time, also with matter energy, and to name just a few topics wherein ang coverage ng computer nga application is very much wide as compared sa before during its first discovery. So in a way, computer usage can be used is basically limitless as per a person's imagination on how he can or he or she can implement it in a computer program or in computer software. So, yun naman click. So a brief timeline of a computer, no, kung discovery natin how it was developed. It started initially in the late 1940s and early 1950s, and were designed initially for the military and governmental use. So basically, ang US Defense again, US military defense was the first organization that was able to use after the development of the early versions of the computer, which is initially good for defense lang gid, and maybe for spying and any other military agendas ng gamit nila of the government. And then later on, the microprocessor 1971 was developed by Dr. Ted Hoff, who at the time worked for Intel, and the start of the microprocessor technology nag-develop naman siya by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak for having the first Apple computer after its development by Dr. Ted Hoff. And also in 1980, Bill Gates worked with IBM to develop the disk operating system or the DOS for the IBM PC. So in being a rival of the Apple computer, the IBM PC was also developed in the late 80s. So in definition again, let us kumbaga divide that basic definition nga define kanina, no? So it is an electronic device but receives data. So receiving data is via the input, a processing data by the term process, and then it can store data by the term storage, and also producing a result which they call as the output. So we need instructions and programs to control the computer, and under that category those are called as our software. And the physical parts, as we assemble a computer system unit, we buy up the motherboard, mga storage, mga wires, cables niya, mga hard disk. Those physical parts are called as the hardware part of the computer. So a computer processes data by using this basic definition, processing data, so important in terms data, and produces an output through an information. So anything that is produced as a result is called an output and also termed as an information. So this cycle is called is the input processing storing in output sequence is called it as the information processing cycle. So important, it is a continuous cycle wherein as more data is added to the computer for the input, and you get to process it and store it and also produce the information in the sequence, in the last part of the sequence, as an output and information. So if you can have an example, no, ton isang information processing cycle naton. For example, this is input for a printout, no. So we'll have the input of data through a keyboard. So ang tao sa ma-type out yan ng information. So these are the data, the name, and the address, and the any other added the data diri. So tool 1, tool 2 for example. As we input the data to computer, you can then have it to process the data. For example, you would have this information printed on a printer. So you will command the computer to process this data to produce this output. But at the same time, if you want it to save first the data, so pareho man sa aton nga Word, no, you can press file save as or Control S to save this information to your files. Then also it is also part of this cycle wherein you can also store the data information, and at the same time put out an output via a printout or just a display to your monitor. So later on we will identify ang aton nga mga input devices, storage and processing devices, and other output devices pagid nga to become familiarized kung ano pwede ilagay na obra, specifically under this four categories naman, pero you can also identify which one are your storage, your processing, your input and output devices. So next, computer benefits. Basically, ang pinaka nakuha natin ka mabulig this is we can have them being productive. This at the same time, it can store massive amounts of information and reduce waste, wherein you can just not basically typing out sa typewriter but also just put out the input through the computer and then just having to save in a virtual copy, or we can call it as the soft copy in the storage of the computer. So basically you're not having physical paper as an output but rather having them as a virtual information stored in your hard disk or your hard drive. It also helps you connect to the internet, so that's very basic. Helps sort, organize, and search through information. So later on we'll have the application of a Google search, no, or a web search naton through sa next topic naton by having the usage of the internet. So diri na ni masupa. It keeps you connected by not only having to connect to the internet but also on other local area network or wide area network, so which also discuss this in the succeeding topics. And also we have a better understanding of data by, for example, having software to maximize raw data, for example statistics, no, or excel data na from raw data of having just a table of information of numbers. You can have the computer produce a better understanding or produce a graph or a map to make the users mas makabalo si machindi sang output niya sang not just having a number of table numbers, but also a map or a graph to visualize the data that was placed into that computer, and also can help you learn and keep you informed, given that news and information also produced through the internet and also from various softwares that helps you learn. And of course, kung example sa inyong subject is you can have reviewers or any other PDF files used to uh, study or manang inyong output sa manang subject. And lastly, you can earn money basically from having the skills of being a programmer, for example, and also from other way nga mga benefit as having the computer as your main source of income. And also the disadvantage, di naman tanan nga bagay may advantage, no? We have pros and cons in having the use of computers. So health risk basic is having kung tama ka pong ko agad, you can also develop nga magsakit imong likod, ang imong spinal column mo maging strain or something mudra, or carpal tunnel syndrome, or kung sa carpal ang sa inyo nga kamot na nga kung wala naka tukod basically nga hindi siya comfortable nga pagtukod sa kamot nyo sa mouse, it can develop later on kung sige-sige siya na as an effect sa carpal tunnel niya na. And also eye strain, if the screen nyo is tama ka bright na or tama ka dark, mas strain gid yung mata nga mag-focus in looking at their screen. So I would suggest nga practice nyo gid ang inyong kung whenever kung mga class ka mo, no nyo gid set up nyo gid mismo na inyong like magplungkuan nyo inyong laptop or PC para nga maging lessen nato ng health risk of using your computers, no. And also the disadvantage, short attention span and too much multitasking. Isa giniga permi naton nga problema, especially subong pareho naton nga online class kita. And since nga hindi man kamo tanan naka sa laptop or sa PC, so in case kung sa cellphone nga medyo mabudlay magid man mag steady sa yung attention, given that kada mo sa ma-distract mo sa inyong background or sa inyong surroundings nyo. And amo man na the same sa computer naman, sa setup naman sa computer, if you have a lot of software nga naka-open, so you would only just go with opening other tasks while also listening to this lecture, for example. So it's a very natural naman lang mga muna for having to multitask during the course of the class. So it's also become a disadvantage if you get your attention nga na-disregard nyo na or hindi nyo na cope up kundi na itong parts ng lecture sang lesson naman na. And also we have potential of loss of privacy, given damo sa mga example mga hacking stuff. So that is also a part of our lecture na sa next naton. We'll go into detail on those on how you can protect your online privacy whenever you connect to the internet. So another disadvantage can limit learning and create a dependency. Computer dependency can be a good and bad thing, but initially it becomes worse when you become too dependent to your computer to perform certain tasks. Also time sink and a lot of distractions, as mentioned kagina about distractions in computer, not only having to use your basic programs to produce mo sa mga reports nyo or assignments, but also having games na online can be a good or a bad distraction while you get to work on your assignments. And it can also reduce jobs by having computerized nga mga examples is mga computerized nga mga ang nga term nila na mga alay na ba imbes nga imuha na lang sang tao, they will just create a program in a computer to do the job more efficiently. So an effect na ng mga tao nga before nga may task sa mga itong obra will lose their jobs because kinbuslan na sila sa computer for a more efficient and faster output. So mga ganang disadvantage nila at the risk of having the a better technology but also losing the jobs of the people behind it at the process. And also increasing waste and impacts the environment. This is what we call as at times as electronic waste. Ang problema talaga minsan is ang aton nga mga e-waste if not properly disposed, it can cause environmental hazards gid. So basically having mga junk shop no to cater those mga e-waste naton. Example is mga guba nga mga computer and stuff, mga motherboard yan na mga parts sa mga computer, mga battery na example can also be needed to have ma-properly disposed sila and by using the practices gid sang sakto nga disposal as handle gid ni isang aton nga mga sa mga aton nga mga kung sino nga organization na in charge for this for himuson kato ang mga klase nga waste. And for classifying computers naton no, classify naton basic kit is special purpose and general purpose. So when you use special purpose as the term defines, it is used to control objects, basic specific functions such as telephones, appliances, and scientific experiments. Whereas for general purpose computers, these are categorized based on the size, function, cost, and performance and include our basic na aton mga desktop computer, mobile smartphones, mid-range computers for mga businesses, mainframe, so pareho naman sa mga Facebook and supercomputers. They also use those type of computers which they also categorize as general purpose but mainly for going back again to the basic function niya nga the processing cycle which we have defined earlier no among yapon ang ginobra sa mga general purpose computers. So specific purpose computers are basically just doing the thing kung ano gid ang pinaka main niya gid nga obrahon and effects sa aton nga telepono and example mga appliances like mga aton nga mga ano example sa appliances mga toaster naton or ano mga cooking devices is may lagi na sila nga naka-program just to perform those implications sa mutong appliances. And also again for specific experiments, mga experiment naton sa mga science labs na those they use computers but also they were programmed just to function under that certain mga function certain nila nga situations dira sa scientific experiments nila. And they can check on this the virtual version of our computers. So we have mobile, no? So we call it now so mobile smartphones naton. Those are the mobile type of computers. We also have the desktop, the basic desktop naton mga 90s or early 2000s ani. We can check na line pa yang mga input. May CD-ROM siya but we also have a floppy disk input here. Ang iyang monitor is CRT pa. Which unlike sa mostly LED na kag mga high-end ba nga type of monitors. And also this is an example of our mid-range computers. This looks like a pile of tables no but these are just electronically nga mga storage devices na sila which also has a processor inside nga baka function. And then mainframe computers example sa IBM mo na ilang kina-develop nila nga mainframe computer and also sa supercomputer naman these are for large businesses such as Facebook ng mga Google may have these supercomputers wherein they store it sa mga dagko nga mga rooms specifically for handling large amounts of data in a fast paced no scenario. Sila ginabutan nila sa lang ka room mostly of isa ka floor gid if needed and those are set up in a way nga tanan nga info and data stored are specifically added sa the amount nga setup in which large amounts are being placed inside and out nga gina-process sa mga type of computers. So these are the large scale type, you can say it as the large scale. and amo na yung mga medium and small scale type of computers, and kung kumbaga sa aton bagid nga subtype if we can define it. And then for the computer softwares, two types naman naton sa software is application and system software. So we can check on this, ang aton diri, this group is when this group is basically composed of aton nga mga system software. Windows XP is an example, Windows 10 ang subong, Windows 11 na. We also have the Apple, ano na, ang nato na, di pa ako sa Apple ka software nga OS nila, iOS I mean. Then we have Linux of course for mostly programming based lang na setup, and Android for our sa mobile phones naton. We have Android as our system software. Then on this part, sa aton application software, we have a bunch of example. Most of these are familiar naman sa inyo if you're using office tools, no? We have Word, Excel, or kung sa WPS line man ingala nila, but the same functionality man, having Word documents, mga Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint, and our data, mga Gmail naton, Google Docs, also PDF readers, mga this is Outlook, Google Drive lang wherein we store our files online, and also Paint 3D, subong is MS Paint or just the basic na lang, mga free softwares man that we can download online or we can just readily use it online, and some music output. So wala naman, medyo daan naman siya. So these are example of your application softwares. And next, communication networks we define as electronic communication naton no brano, or what it makes it possible for computers to communicate with each other and with other devices. So what we're doing now is basically an example of our electronic communication. So we define it as a data communication carried over both wired and wireless system. So in this setup, we also use a combination of wired, no? Kung example, kung using modem, no, from your sa balay nyo, madiretso na sa makonect sa isa man ka tab kaya nabutang sa example yung sa PLDT, meron silang wire man ginabutang sa mga along with the electronic post. So from your home makonect na sila sa dito, and then later on sa end part siya makonect, either it can go wired man gyapon or it can connect to a satellite system, no, nga may haboy na sa sang wireless nga communication through sa other mga satellite punto, which will go and receive and sending also a response to that communication. So it can be both, not only wired and wireless, but also you can purely go with wired and purely wireless type of system for electronic communication. And for the establishment of the ARPANET, this is basically the core, or kumaga the main na cause nga mayroon may ara kita nga mga communication network setup is because of the development of the ARPANET. So in this graph you can see that we have four components to having to communicate electronically. So we have the sender, the receiver, channel, and protocol. So these are each are defined in its own in the setup. The source is the sender, basically the information source is stable. Then he will use the transmitter as the device to send through the channel and to the receiver. So data is streamed from the information source to the transmitter, and then the transmitted signal as produced by this transmitter goes to the channel, and also in between those transmission may noise source kita ni dito gini malikawan nga may noise source which is to try to disrupt and ang information getting transmitted to this channel, no. But at the same time, as the received signal is being received by the receiver, it will now then be converted and converted into useful information into your information destination, in which by the using of the recovered stream from the received signal of the receiver. So take note of again the four components, importantly sender, receiver, the channel is amo ning ginaagyan naton, and the protocol is how the type of communication is done. May discussion ta sini in the next topic. So basically tandaan nyo lang na yung mga nga term for your communication and networks, and also the ARPANET as the lead, as the historical creation of which became the basis for your electronic communications. So two or more networks that are computer systems that link together are considered a network. So it can be large or small, and the computers in the network that connected on it are called clients or nodes, and the servers are the ones who allocate the resources. So if you can see in this example, we have the server, a server computer. It is connected then to users of various communicating devices. So you can connect to a desktop computer, you can connect to a laptop, maybe through wire or wireless. Through smartphone, basically wireless can see smartphone or your mobile computer, and to a printer. So these are example of printers, no? Output printer naton. It can be wired or wireless depending on the setup of your system. Pero isa din mo makita natin if you're going to sa inyo computer lab, no? Sa high school, no, kung may computer lab ka mo, amo gining usually set up, they have various computers nga naka-connect, may server nga computer dayon to handle the request. For example, kung may pa-print out ka mo, so it will go from this specific user, no? Mas-send it sa data through the can be wireless or wire. There is a server computer, then ang server computer amo na ma-process ang i-output, which will send the data to a printer or maybe to a scanner or anong need yun kinahanglan for its output. So amo ning ato nga basic nga communication network setup. So internet and extranet. So as defined by ang iyang term intra and extra. Ang maghambal sila nga intranet is a computer network for sharing information, communication, collaboration tools, operating systems, and other computing services with the term of within. Ang mga within is inside lang, an organization, and usually with the exclusion of the access for the outsiders. So in internet, amo ning iyang you can visualize a setup of this kind of network. It has access, and kung magsulod ng mga ang mga outsider, they would need to have this access to go to this internet, and also the collaboration and data ang within collaboration is just within the network, also with data sharing and communication, and you can consider this a private network because wala sila gina-involved sa mga outside nga mga networks or other users outside of this network. So information is kept na within this network as long as mga data gina-store nila, no? So ang aton nga core word nato na tandaan is ang intra. So intra is within an organization or network and excluded from outside access. Now opposite naman sa extra is outside, a controlled private network, but it allows access to partners. Mga partners you can say that this is a private network, but having access to partners, vendors, and suppliers, or an authorized set of customers outside sila sa network, and is normally a subset to the information accessible from an organization's intranet. So mga subset, the intranet is existing dira sa sulod sa amon, but then amon sa kung makita mo rin sa diagram sini, ang internet is just within dire. But the extranet allows it an access to the outside by having this connection, or we can use the internet mismo as our way to communicate sa aton outside nga mga network. Like for example, ang customers network nila, they uses the internet to access the intranet of this organization's setup. So they have a server, and also remember that we have firewall defined later on for protecting data and making sure that nagasulod din nga data ang gagwa is valid and does not have any virus or any mga malware nga gasulod sa among intranet. So they allow access through an internet server, wherein the internet is basically your extranet may network for communicating with the customers and other vendors and suppliers depending on the business organization sa amo ng network. So the internet, we define it as the global system of interconnected computer use network that uses the Internet Protocol Suite or the TCP/IP. Kung makita nyo na sa settings sa inyo ng mga ano no, mga setup ko sa inyo internet, nasa settings sa network ang mga TCP/IP na tawag nila, or the Internet Protocol Suite to communicate with the networks and devices. So network are networks that consist of public, private, academic, business, and government networks of local to global scope and linked to a broad array of electronic, wireless, and optical networking technologies by wiki definition is internet naton. And the internet is again based for aton kagina to no, for if you remember the setups ng early usage ng computers, it also becomes the reference by the development of the packet switching and research as commissioned by the US Department of Defense. So, ari galing sa 1960s, din sa na-develop to enable time sharing of computers. So, as a result, ang motong kagay ng ARPANET naton as the core or the primary precursor network. And it is basically the first computer network that was developed in its history. So, by the need of the US Defense nga maka time sharing sila sa ilang mga computer sila nga set up to nila, they develop this network and basically it becomes the core as the origin gid sa aton nga internet nga ginagamit subong. So technology in everyday life basically ang inobra subong first office education gid. So computer store huge amounts of data in a very small space. So basically shrinking shelves of reference books. Imbes nga madala ka na sa damong libro, you just basically use a single flash drive to save up your mga readings nyo, mga reference, mga notes, or maybe just basically mga lectures nyo sa inyo ang teachers, you can save it as a PDF file and later on pwede yun na ma-review. So this basically shelved out the huge nga kung example magdala ka sa una makadto ka sa mga library to check out reference books no. Although subong pwede pa magyapon magamit, but it's now a combination of computer technology and mga old school na ton nga mga libro to also check on kung din nga example if you need to mangita ka sa certain nga topic ito kung din nga part sang library na nga mo nga information, you can use the computer to search for it. So manang kumbaga the combination ng technology naton sa aton nga education processing. And also for communication, we have reached to a point where instant communication anywhere in the world is a possibility. Isa na gid na ang aton nga through chat no, maka-communicate ta instantly kung makatawag ta sa Google sa Messenger or pareho sa Google Meet. So the benefits of better interaction, speed, reliability, and easy self-service and reaching a larger audience is a good way of having this technology in our daily life. And for health, investment of diagnostic tools which permit doctors to identify health problems early and improving the odds of a successful life-saving treatment. Unlike before, para ganing vaccines nato no, the development of vaccines has been effective and has been practically eradicating diseases that was once caused massive epidemics. So if you notice today mga ang pareho sa aton yung COVID-19 nga mga vaccines no, mas dasig lang isa na ma-develop as compared before sa mga previous nga mga pandemic naton, wherein with the help of the computer and the technology it has been naging fast-paced na ang setup sa mga in discovering this type of vaccines nga maging effective siya at the same time mas dasig sa i-develop. So maging start of the technology. And lastly, I think this is not yet the last, productivity naman no. Increase your productivity since having the computer to solve complex mathematical equations has allowed them to speed up practically every task. Isa na itong example, if you have sa inyong mga math nyo ano no, sa mga math nyo mga assignments or sa mga projects, you need to compute complex mathematical equation. You can use a calculator or you can have the equation solved by the Excel, no, sa mga spreadsheets. Mayroon na mga certain equations nga pwede ma-solve instantly, isa lang ka-click ma-solve yun na dayon. And can also develop a map or a graph para nga makita ang output. So it has basically that changed the productivity from going to manual, from manual setup solving to just a mere click of a button or a function of the calculator. So computers in the future, as you expected, no, it has become smaller and smaller and more mobile. As kung compare ko sa una, mabako before nga kung college ako, ang mga cellphone sa una, wala pa na sa mga smartphone nga setup. They only used for communication, again, texting and calling. Possible nga, you can basically use all kinds of functionalities sa computer, not only nga makabrowse ka sa internet, but you can also do online banking, mga ano pa ginang needed ng information, makabasa ka news, maka-monitor ka sa imong jogging, maka-monitor ka sa nga bike ka, and any other functionalities na apps pwede ka magamit sa computer. And at the same time, naging mas mobile na siya and mas gamay na siya mas gamit, and also ang speed niya and processing is mas dasig na gid. So wireless and mobile devices has become the norm, and we did a will kay subong mo na gini. And also computer literacy, the knowledge and understanding computer uses will become even more important. Hence we have this subject sa aton nga class where not only having familiar ka magamit sa computer, but also being literacy in the knowledge and understanding of their uses. So, one kan reference, mga website, i-provide yung mga karon ng inyong PDF files ini, which you can also check these links for more readings na lang. So, any questions?